Our client was a very large Indian home appliances manufacturer. I'll say that again. Turns out it's difficult for me as well. Our client was a very prominent and very large home appliance manufacturer in India with employees around 4,000 people working across the country in different locations, different branches, corporate offices and things like that. And since they had so many people and such a big business, they wanted to hire more people on a very consistent basis, week on week basis, month on month basis. And they had recruiters set up throughout the country to be able to do this process. Now, when you have so many people, gathering the requirement for what the hire is going to be. So business was telling the HR what the hiring is going to be, how many people are you supposed to hire. And the HR then was creating a lot of data, which is the interview data of speaking with the candidates, moving them in the interview chain, the hierarchy of the interviews from the interviews to the final interviews to the applications and things like that. They were creating a lot of data. And the problem for the HR head was that they were not able to take a look at all of this interview application data in one picture. That means how many positions were we supposed to hire and how many interviews have we taken and what's the status of the candidates who are closed and things like that. So the entirety of the recruitment process was not available in one picture. That was one big problem the client was facing. The second thing was that the data was very scattered. So half of the data was captured on a system coming from the client's internal process of recruitment, which is where every single position that they had to hire for was being captured. And a lot of data was generated manually when the recruiters were speaking with the candidates, taking their interviews and things like that. Now, unfortunately, every single recruiter maintained the data in their own way, and that became a very big inconsistent data source, which had to be brought together and work with that to create some very good analysis. Now, one other problem that we figured out was that when we were taking a look at the existing analysis, whatever broken analysis that they did with the data, it was riddled with errors. There were a lot of inconsistencies, mistakes in the calculations and things like that, primarily because the data was not consistent. So the data was being created by people, and hence that led to calculation errors, copy-paste errors and things like that. So it was a big pile of mess that we were presented as a problem that we had to solve, not only just to bring the entire metrics together and take a look at one holistic picture, but also to solve for data consistency that these people were working on. When we came in to solve this mess of the data problem, we first thought that it's going to be wise for us to go attack the data source where the data is being generated. So one data source was definitely where people were feeding the data, that how many hires do you have to make, which was system generated, that was okay. But then there was a lot of data which was being created by recruiters that were speaking with people. Now what we did was we created very simple Excel and Google Sheets templates because they had distributed people all across the country. So, and they didn't want to invest in a very expensive system to capture the data. They still wanted the entire team to stick with rudimentary tools like Excel or Google Sheets. So we built a secure system, like a templatized system, where the errors were significantly reduced. And people were able to gather the data in a very structured format. And then through that system, we were able to get all of the data and put it together in one single model, which is where not only it gathered the data, but if it required any cleaning of the data or any exception reporting that the error has been committed, it used to just tell it back to the recruiter that, hey, so-and-so fields are incorrect and you will have to correct them. Once the data had been brought together and we were able to take a look at the entire data at one single source, then we started to identify the key metrics or the most important numbers that the HR heads should be concerned with and started to build those calculations. And we came up with a very interesting three-part structure of the dashboard. The first one was that in a bird's eye view, you would be able to take a look at what are all the positions which are opened for the company, like how many positions do you have to hire for and how many positions of those hiring requests have been completed. So very big picture of what the hiring is at the moment. Then from there, we thought that it's going to be a good idea that if you want to get more information about a specific position, then the HR head or anybody, HR manager, would be able to then drill down and take a look at very specific interview data for some specific location. So let's just say that one of the locations in Mumbai, was been pending for the last 180 days, and you've had a lot of interviews for that position, but still not been able to close any particular candidate. So you would be able to then take that business request or hiring request, drill down to the second page, and then take a look at what exactly happened with all of the people that you've interviewed, at what stage are they, and things like that. So there were three screens. One was the entire overview of the positions. The second screen was the interview drill down. You'll be able to take a look at the drill down of the interview of the candidates who are being interviewed. And then the final was the hiring cost, because the company was spending a lot of money on multiple sources. So they were spending a lot of money on consultants they were hiring from. They were spending a lot of money on these platforms, LinkedIn, Naukri, the one very large platform in India, and a couple of Indeed was another platform. So they were spending a lot of money on these platforms, and they wanted to track that. How effective are these platforms when it comes to getting candidates that they would like to have in the company? So platform efficiency was another big part of this analysis. So we built this into three parts. Like I said, the first one was positions, and from the positions you take a look at the interview status of the candidates. In case you want to drill down further, you can take a look at the cost implications as well. Once we identified and calculated all the metrics, all that we had to do was put all of these calculations in the form of a beautiful looking dashboard that laid out the picture. So we arranged all the important KPIs and the filters up on the top. We laid down all the metrics at the bottom and more details at the bottom. We created some very nice drill throughs in Power BI that the person will be able to drill through and take a look at more deeper details, but also have a very large picture of how the main metrics were moving. So that was a fun assignment to do, which is where we built these three screens, and the company would now be able to take a look at this. Now, the interesting part was, now this became an on-demand dashboard. So as soon as the HR head wants to take a look at a particular week, a particular time period, and the recruiter has updated the data in their Excel or Google Sheets or whatever that is, the dashboard could just be refreshed whenever there is a demand for taking a look at the data and taking a look at the analysis. So this become nearly an automated process where the leaders, business leaders, HR leaders would then be able to take a look at how the recruitment process was moving. The impact was tremendous, I'd say. And I believe the company was spending about, I think, 50 to 60 man hours every single week for that broken, error-prone analysis that they were doing, scattered across multiple sheets. And that was ad hoc, so it did not even hold a lot of value in perpetuity. That's something that could be taken a look at every single time. So that 50 hours per week was cut down to nearly a few minutes that it takes to get the dashboard ready. You just have to make sure that the data is updated, click on a refresh, and that was a major time savings for the company. And all of the resources that were allocated to creating the dashboard manually were then freed up, and they were then able to kind of do more value-adding tasks. The other very important thing that happened is that now the business leaders had a perspective of the entire recruitment function in one single dashboard. So they weren't looking for the answers outside of the dashboard. Whatever they wanted, they had the answers right within that dashboard. This meant that if they wanted to take a decision based on any particular hiring, they wanted to take a decision based on any particular candidate or any hiring cost, they could almost do that in real time. There was no lag in the data coming in, cleaning off the data, automating that, and then taking a decision. There was no lag. It was near real time that they were able to take a look at the data and make very good decisions based on that data. Well, the hardest part about the assignment was building a template that is easy to use for all the recruiters so that they can capture the data in a well-structured format. That was, I believe, the hardest part of the assignment, where we had to speak with a lot of recruiters, take a look at how much proficiency they have with Excel, and then build up a template that worked for everybody else. So that was one of the challenging parts. I think the calculations were at times a bit too tricky as well. Other than that, I think it was okay. Yeah, one other thing that was interesting to put together was, how are we going to present this dashboard in a way that makes sense to the management? We spent quite a bit of time on how they took a look at the data, what are the key metrics they take a look at, how are they reading it, what are the key decisions that they're making off the data, and then be able to come up with a view that placed all the main metrics up on the top, and then still give them the ability to go in enough detail without actually cluttering the dashboard. So that was another very interesting part of the dashboard to work on, and all of this work probably took us about 6 to 8 weeks or so, to and fro communications with the client. And we worked very aggressively. Once we were given a task, we just pounced on it, and we gave them a lot of iterations to work with, and got a lot of feedback from the client as well, and then be able to put together this particular dashboard for them. And also the training part of the dashboard was very exciting. So when we actually handed over the dashboard to the client, we also trained them as to how do you use it, how do you take a look at it, and that was another very exciting part of this assignment. In case you're not really sure how do you actually start to use modern days Excel capability to build out sophisticated reports for your own organization, I'd highly recommend that you get in touch with us, and we'll be glad to help you out.